Hi, everybody. Will here with another great interview brought to you by Canine Chronicle TV and Dog Show Tips. Today on the chair is none other than Frank Murphy. Lots of stories here. Sit back and enjoy. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. The interview chair brought to you by Dog Show Tips and Canine Chronicle TV. Today on the chair, we have retired professional handler Frank Murphy. How are you, Frank?
Very well. How are you?
I'm good. It's good to see you. How's the weather down there right now?
We're in peak leaf changing season in the upstate of South Carolina. It's absolutely beautiful. I'm looking outside at the pond in front of the house, and it looks like a postcard.
I'm jealous. Mine doesn't look like a postcard. Mine looks like it's not horrible yet, but it's gray and wet and cold, and I have a
Right.
sweater on. All right, let's get started. Tell me how you got started in this crazy world of dogs.
Well, you know, I was 12 years old. I lived in Brooklyn, New York. And back in those days, there was a company called TFH, and they put out a little tiny thin book called How to Raise and Train Your Whippet,
I
or
remember
How to
those books. Yeah.
Raise and Train Your Labrador, right? So I had a dollar. They were a dollar a piece. I had a dollar. I go down to the pet store, and the man that owned the place says to me, "How many of these books do you have?" I said, "I have 41." And every one was a breed that I was going to have. I was going to have that kind of dog. So he says to me, "Good Lord, man." He says, "There's a book right here." And he reached on the shelf and he pulled down this book, and it was probably this thick. And he said, "This book has the first chapter of all those other books you read all together in one." And I said, "Yeah, but that looks expensive." He said, "Well, it's $36, which back then that was a fortune." So he says to me, "Do you want a job?" And I said, "Yeah, I want a job." He said, "Well, you come in here at 6 o'clock in the evening and work till 7. It pays $1.25 an hour, and you feed all the puppies, and then clean the bowls and put the puppies away." And I said, "Okay, fine." So after however many days, I had enough money to buy the book, and I bought that book. I had it forever, and so the point of this is 12 years old, I was already dog crazy. And I'm 66 years old now, and it's only gotten worse.
Yeah, I get it. I understand. So what
Uh,
happened? You have that book. What was next?
well, uh, I had a collie that I showed in obedience.
How did you
Um,
get this collie?
you know, I, um, I broke my leg. I got in a little skirmish in this bar in Orlando back in the disco.
You?
Yeah. And there was concrete steps in front of the bar, and rolled down the concrete steps, had a broken leg when I got to the bottom with this fella. And so I was not entered in classes. I was in college at the time, so I wasn't entered in any classes. And I rode up to Canada uh, to chasing some girl that I knew. They got a job up there for GE. And I was up there until we couldn't stand each other anymore, and came back home. And my neighbors, or my friend's neighbor, had a litter of collie puppies. And I had a little money left over, and I think I paid $50 for him. And so I got this collie, and I was showing him in obedience. And I had the opportunity to buy a German Shepherd, and in 1980. I was a founding member of a Schutzhund club.
Oh.
So we did that for a couple of years. That was a lot of fun. And I was at a dog show, probably for obedience, and I saw them doing the conformation, and I thought, man, I want to try that. So went and watched that for a while. And in 1983, I bought a Rhodesian Ridgeback puppy from Wendy Wolforth in Florida. And that's when I started showing dogs. They were my
Just
dogs.
like that.
Yeah. And in the meantime, I got
How
out of
did you learn to
college.
show dogs off, Frank? Just by watching?
Yeah, and I went to handling class, you know, but I learned by doing. They were my dogs, so there was no pressure.
Right.
And then, well, in 1986, there was a Ridgeback National in Burlington, Vermont, and I had a dog up there that belonged to a friend of mine, and I won the sweepstakes with it. And they protested me because they said I was a professional handler because I had a Gordon Setter bitch in the van that I was showing. And I wasn't exactly getting paid to show her, but the lady owned a groom shop and she was giving me gifts like clippers and scissors and stuff, you know. So it didn't take long. I was showing my friends' dogs for money.
And you just, how did you learn? You learn by hit and miss? And
It must have been. There was a really good guy.
because you got really good at it, Frank. So how did that happen?
Did you ever read The Outliers?
No, I didn't know.
There's a tremendous book called The Outliers, and in it he describes how Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, um, the NHL hockey players, the Beatles, how they got to be the greatest at what they were. They weren't born to be that way, but they got that way through 10,000 hours of practice. Now, I know, Will, if you think 2 minutes per dog, how many dogs you showed for how many shows a year. I was driving down the highway one day and I was reading this book and I started to add it up. I was way past
I'm going to write that down, The Outliers.
It's a tremendous book, yeah. So 10,000 hours of doing something, especially as simple as showing a dog, if you don't get good at it, there's a problem, right? So I started showing these dogs and going to handling class. There was a guy in the club that had a best in show in German Shepherd dog. And that was before they split the group, the working and the herding group. And so he was good at what he did. And many years after that, I took over teaching the class, and I taught handling for about I taught obedience for about 10 years. I probably taught handling for another 10 years until I started being on the road all the time and I wasn't there for the classes. You know?
So what did you do? Like you obviously didn't just did you have a job prior to becoming a professional handler where you're always gone?
Yeah, so I I got out of college and I took a job as an electrician's helper. And I did that for about a year, and you had to work a year before they put you into the apprenticeship program. So I got put in the apprenticeship program. I went to night school for 4 years, and after about 2 years, I was running a job, and the inspector came along and he said, "Who's in charge of the job?" And I said, "I am." And he said, "Show me your license." And I said, "Well, I don't have a license." So he threw me off the job. So my boss said to me, "There's a class coming up where you do a preparatory class for taking the test." And he said, if you do that, you can probably pass the test. So I did that. It was summertime and the night school wasn't going on. So I went to the prep class and I got my journeyman's license. And then they said, you have enough time before class starts again to take the prep course for the master's license. So I took that course and I got a master electrician's license. I still had 2 more years of night school, which was to get the original journeyman's license. But I did it anyway. But so I was a project superintendent for an electrical contractor. And I was showing dogs on the weekend. I'm driving all night on Friday to get to the shows. I'm driving all night on Sunday to get back from the shows. And I'm having lunch on a Saturday at a dog show. And I'm adding up the dogs that I've shown already. And it occurred to me that I made more money before lunch on Saturday morning than what I was taking home in my check from the electrical contract. And I had a pretty good job. I had a company.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So I put my notice in, and in 1991, I left that. I did have a pet food store, so I had other income. I had a pet food store for a number of years in Florida. And then actually that was holding me back from traveling too. So I sold that and just showed dogs.
It's incredible how the stories I get to hear, because that's a great story. So keep going, because you had such great success. I want to know how that all happened, like Sam Lawrence and the rest, how that all came about.
Well, I had this young Ridgeback dog, and I put him in my friend's name, Frank DePaulo. You know Frank DePaulo.
Yeah, Frank. Yeah, for sure.
I said, Frank, I want you to own this dog because he's going to win a lot, and I don't want my clients getting mad at me if I show him and miss their dog. So he said, okay, fine. So I did that. And Sam would be at the shows watching his Cocker Spaniel with Bob, or Kryptonite with George.
Yeah.
And he would come over and he'd say to me, I love that Ridgeback dog of yours. I love him. Why don't those people who own him do a better job of pushing him? So finally said to him one day, you could have that dog. And he says, really? I said, yeah. I said, he's really my dog, And so he says to me, well, let me think about that. And it took him about a month. And I know he called a lot of his friends that were judges, not so much asking if they thought the dog was good, but about me. And he called me about a month later and he says, I think I'd like to have that dog. So we did it. He came up to Atlanta, he and Marion, and we went into my travel trailer and he showed me what the ads were going to look like. Michael Canaliza laughs. He says, don't get too excited about the ads because they'll be pretty plain. I said, oh, that's okay, because there's none now, right?
Yeah.
So he says to me, now look, one of my best friends is judging here, and I don't want her to feel any pressure. So I'm not going to tell her until the end of the weekend that this is my dog. And I said, okay. And it was Denny Codner. So Denny does the breed and she beats me. So Sam's sitting at the group and oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm getting this all wrong. She puts me up, right? And then she gives me the group. And nobody has, she didn't do the breed, she did the group. She gives me the group. No one had said anything to her. I'm getting the picture taken, and Sam walks over and says, Denny, I'm so glad you love that dog because that's my new dog. And she says, well, don't be telling me that. She says, I have 2 more days of judging here. The next day, she beats me in the breed. Just to piss Sam off, and believe me, it did, So,
I bet.
So anyway, that's how that thing got rolling. And I remember another thing from that weekend. The first night, Sam says to me, we're going to go out to celebrate. So, be ready at 7 o'clock. We're going to go out. So we go to dinner. The next day at the dog show, he says to me, "Where do you want to have dinner tonight?" And I said, "Oh, I don't know. I don't care." And he says, "Okay, I'll pick you up. We'll go." So we go again. The third day, he says to me, "Where do you want to have dinner tonight?" And I said, "Sam, we don't have to go out to dinner every single night, you know." And he says to me, "What the hell do you think I'm going to do? Eat alone?" And then I started thinking, what did I get myself into? You know, right? I mean, I hardly even know this guy. And
Right.
I have to have dinner with him every single night. I mean, I wanted to hang back and drink some beers with my friends at the dog show. And so I thought, whoa, I don't know about this, right? Well, 10 years later, when it was done, I looked back on those dinners. There was never a dinner I didn't want to go to. There was never a dinner that was uncomfortable. There was never a dinner that I I never spent the day thinking, "Damn, I wish I didn't have to go to dinner with Sam tonight." It just wasn't like that. It was just, it was terrific. And we didn't talk about the dog show too much. We talked about everything else. So it was a great experience for me.
I bet. I never got to. I met him a few times. I never got to know him. I have no idea what he was really like, but you got to find out. So
Yeah. I mean, we told Sam stories for many, many years after he passed. He told me a story one time. He had judged German Shepherd specialties for a long, long time. And he was his friend Denny and some of his other friends, they're trying to get him to start judging at the all breed shows. So he went out west and he did 150 German Shepherds. And it's all he did all day long. It took him all day. When he put on a new pair of cowboy boots to go out there and do that. And he said his feet hurt so bad when the judging was over that he told Denny, "I'm not going to stay and watch the group. So I go back, take my shoes off." So Denny said, "Fine." And she sits down, and the panel is Annie Clark, Mike Billings, Janie Forsyth, Danny. So they're watching the herding group, and he had put up a 12 to 18 sable shepherd class bitch to rate over all those dogs. And he said to me, she was a little thin. And he said, sable shepherds look thinner than they are, right? So the herding group comes in, and the AKC rep, who I'm happy to tell you, I don't know who he was. I didn't know him. And he's standing behind the judges, and the shepherd comes in and flies around the ring, and he says, "Who in the hell did German Shepherds today?" And he gets his judging program out of his pocket, and he looks it up, and he says, "Sam Lawrence, who's that?" So he obviously wasn't impressed with the shepherd bitch, and he said it in front of everybody. And of course, Denny told him that night at dinner. So he made up his mind he was going to kill the guy, right? And the guy died.
oh
he,
jeez.
he passed away. So I said to him, "Well, whatever happened to that shepherd bitch?" And he said, "She won 2 national specialties." But that's just the first Sam story that popped up in my head.
Good story.
You do know that I met my wife at Sam's funeral.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, we used to tell people we met in church, but it was Sam's funeral. When he passed, the family had a ceremony at the grave, and the only 2 people there that weren't family was me, who had shown his dogs, and Deb, who was best friends with his daughter Deborah. So we got to sit together through a lot of that stuff because we weren't families. So that's how I met my wife. So even after Sam passed, he was still looking out for me.
Still looking out for you. That's great. You just gave me a bit of chills there, Frank. Wow. So you had some really great dogs over the years. Who was your besides your first Ridgeback? Who was your next big winner?
Um, So I had shown a lot of Pembrokes. I'd
Yep.
finished Pembrokes, and Sam says to me, I got a Pembroke that's coming, and he's got 4 Best in Shows. He was shown by John Wilcox out in Washington.
Yep.
He was retiring, and he said, Scotty Jurgen with the Shepherds lived in Atlanta. He says it's his dog. He bred the dog, and he bred it with Sally Bishop, who had bred a lot of beautiful
Right.
corgis.
And John showed a lot of her dogs. Yeah. John's a character.
Well, Sam was sending dogs to George Murray, and we knew Bobby and his daughter in the wheelchair, and we were all kind of family together. And he didn't have one that was winning, and I said, Sam, why don't you send the dog to George? And he said, well, why do you say that? And I said, well, it's a corgi. You just stand in front of it and throw liver at it, and it wins. So I said, he'll be fine. So Marion came to me later that day, and she says to me, what's the matter with you? You don't like corgis? I said, yeah, I love corgis. And she said, well, why'd you tell Sam to send that dog to George? And I said, well, I'm just trying to look out for George, And she says, you go to the airport on Monday. That dog's coming to see you. So it was Forrest Gump. And I went and got him out of the airport, at the plane, and he was heavy. He was a roly little sausage. And I started him in Brooksville on the January circuit. And Michael Save said to me, how many breeder judges do you have this week? And I said, I don't know, but I can find out. So I came back to him. I said, 5. And he said, and 5 herding group judges? I said, yes. He says, I predict you're going to win 5. So I said, okay. So at the end of the week, he comes to me and he says, how many of those did you win? I said, 5. And he says, that's what I thought. And
wow,
it was almost the 10 days before he actually looked at me and put his ears up. I mean, there was no show dog there at all. He was fat and soft. He was sleeping on the bed at John and Tammy's house, and he wanted nothing to do with the whole thing. So I inquired around, what am I going to do with it? Michael Save said to me, put him in the kennel and tell your assistant that you don't know his name. He's got no name. The only time you're going to call his name is when you take him out to bathe him, dry him, or show him. And he said, that's it. And about a month later, he's standing at the end of a 6-foot lead with his ears up saying, what do you want me to do now? So it worked out perfectly, and he showed great for a couple of years, and he broke a record that was a dog named Rugby that Joy Brewster showed. And then when it come time for Kevin was next, and I was at the specialty show in Forest, and there was a guy down in Miami who had said to me at one point, when you find the next great corgi, I want to own it for you. And he had dachshunds. So I said, oh, okay, that'd be great. So I'm at the specialty, and I'm watching Carrie Chase win 5-point majors from the bred by exhibitor class with this dog she called Kevin. So I said to her, could that dog be had if I had someone who wanted him? And she said, yes, he could. She says, he and his father hate each other. So she said, I could let him go. So I called Sam that night and was talking about Forrest. And I said, hey, I think I found the next great corgi. And he says to me, you going to get him for that guy in Miami? And I said, yeah, I hope so. And he said, well, what about me? And I said, well, you didn't tell me you wanted to do another corgi. We had done a lot of dogs, but never twice the same breed. So he said, get that dog for me. So the next day I talked to Carrie, I gave her Sam's number, and they made a deal. I had nothing to do with the deal. And Sam said to me, one time he said, "Did she tell you what I paid for that dog?" And I said, "No." And he said, "This is before we started showing him." He says, "You want me to tell you?" And I said, "No." I said, that's the last thing I want to know. So it was funny because I had him in the X Pen, and it was back in Florida at a local show. And Sam drives that big black Mercedes up, and he says, he pushed a button, the window goes down, and he says to me, "Which one is he?" Well, I almost died because he wasn't entered. I gave him a bath, but I didn't even really blow him like straight like I would have if he was showing. I just dried him. And I looked at him in the pen and I thought, oh man, he doesn't look that good right here, you know? So I said, that's him right there. The window's already going up on the Mercedes. And the last thing I hear is, time to put your money where your mouth is. So I thought, oh my God, this dog better win, right? And he won. He won 77 best in shows and won a group at Royal Canin or Eukanuba, and he won a group at the Garden, and he did fine. That
He
dog's
did
problem,
fine. He did fine.
yeah, his problem was he was out for the 2 years that Jimmy was showing Dallas.
Right.
He had 40 best in shows, 44 maybe in 1 year, and you can be number one herding dog with about 30 normally. And Jimmy had, I don't know, 60 or something on Dallas. So Forrest was number one herding dog 1 year, but Kevin was behind Dallas. So
Yeah. Wow. He did fine. 70 best in shows. He did fine.
yeah. And I'll tell you another quick story to the end of that. He he uh, he won the group at Royal Canin, and he wasn't going to be entered again until the Garden in February. So Sam kept saying to me, "Do you think we should show that dog? Do you think we should show that dog?" We were down in Brooksville, and I said, "Sam, that's a smart dog. He's not going to forget how to do this, you know." And I wanted him to be, on his toes when we got to the Garden. So he he wasn't anywhere we didn't show him. He was 6 weeks off, and I'm driving up to New York, and I start thinking, what if he doesn't want to do this? You know, what if he looks at me like I'm crazy in the ring? It's not like I can set him up and hold his ears up, you know. So I got this cold sweat came over me, right? And I'm thinking, oh my God, now maybe I should have shown him. Sam asked me 3 times, don't you think we should show the dog somewhere? But we went up there and he was perfect. He was perfect. There was nothing to worry about. But
Is that the year you won the group?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the year before, Bert Yamada had done the working group, and he put up David Helming's Noof, and he was doing best in show that year, and the Noof won the group. So we lost to the Newfoundland again, but that was a great dog.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Wow, that's a good story though, Frank. So where do you go from Kevin?
Kevin was the last dog that I showed for Sam.
For Sam?
His health was failing, and he said, if I can't go and watch him, it's not as much fun and all. We had a meeting the year before that. I had shown him for 2 years, and he had 30 best in shows. Okay, so Michael Scott had put 70 best in shows on BB for Mrs. Robeson, I think. Yeah. And 30 to 70, that's 40 best in shows. It took us 2 years to win 30. We weren't thinking we were going to win 40. So he said to me, look, I don't want to just cut you off cold. He says, so go ahead and show the Corgi another year. He said, but don't go anywhere special for him. Just show him it wherever you go. So I said, okay, that'll be great. So the first 2 shows of the year in DeLand, Florida in January, he goes best in show at both of them. $2,000 a piece. So I'm driving over to the next show and I'm thinking to myself, so much for that don't go anywhere special stuff, right?
Yeah.
So he breaks the record. He gets 70, I'm going to say he got 74. And BB is back home with Bill Shelton. And he takes her out to a show and he wins the Best in Show honor. And I haven't got Kevin over to Sam yet. He's still at my house. So Sam calls me up and he says, "Did you see what Bill Shelton did?" I said, "No, I didn't. I don't know. He took that old bitch out and he won a Best in Show honor." And I said, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, what are we going to do?" And he says to me, "Wipe that dog off and get him entered." So I
That dog.
entered him in 3 weeks of shows. He wins 4 Best in Shows. And Bill never showed his bitch again. But, that's how I remember how many Best in Shows he had.
Yeah. We need characters like that. I love that. Wipe that dog off and get him in there.
Wipe that dog off. We're getting them back in the ring, So those were great years, working with Sam and Marion. And now I look across the living room and I'm married to a woman I met at his funeral. How about that?
Yep. No, seems like it was meant to be, the whole thing. So
yeah.
So after, obviously when Sam passed, you kept going. So
well, he didn't. We didn't stop when he passed. He stopped when he got sick where he couldn't travel.
Okay.
And then I had a great Siberian dog that Tommy O bred. And
I remember that dog.
Yeah, red
I remember
dog.
his name. I remember seeing it with the dog.
Yeah, and the guy who owned him cut my grass in Florida. I mean, you can't make.
How does that happen?
He
had this dog.
Yeah, he had this bitch that he wanted finished, and I finished her. And he said to me, "What I want to breed her. What should I do?" And I said, "Well, whose dogs do you like?" "Well, I like those dogs that Tommy O guy in Pennsylvania has." I said, "Call him up. Tell him you want to breed the bitch." So Tommy says to him, "Send the bitch to me when she's in season." And he says, "I'll breed her to whatever I think, is the right thing to do. I'll send her back to you." So he has a litter and I look at him. I said, "Keep this one." So I finished that one, sends it back to Tommy. Tommy breeds it to one of the dogs, sends it back to Florida, has a litter, keeps one. And I tell him which one to keep, and I finished that one. It went on like that for 3 or 4 litters, and finally we get a litter, and I said, "Keep this one here," and we weren't doing good with her. Some people would have been happy, but he had a lot of success, and he wasn't happy with it. So he calls Tommy, and he's bitching to Tommy. "Yeah, that was a bum deal. That was not a good breeding and all that." And Tommy says, "I have a red dog here that's 8 weeks old. If I send him to you, will you shut up and quit bitching about the breeding?" And he says, "Well, I don't know if I want a male dog. I never had a male dog." So Tommy talks him into it. He goes to the airport. He comes by my house on the way home, and he says to me, "What do you think about this dog, Frank?" I said, "Man, that's a Best in Show dog." And he says to me, "What kind of stupid thing is that to say? It's 8 weeks old. That's just dumb, but you don't usually talk like that about the dogs." And I said, "I think that's a Best in Show dog." So I finished him at 6 months, and I don't know, he brings him by a little while later, and we start showing him. That dog won 13 Best in Shows, and I never saw a picture of him, least of all anybody else. I mean, the guy showed up and cut my grass every week,
Yeah.
So it seemed like a good deal in the beginning because I only showed a bitch for a month or two once a year for him, Now I got a special that's winning Best in Shows, and he says, I got to come up with some money for you. And I said, yeah, I think you do.
Something. I remember seeing the dog.
It was a tremendous dog, tremendous dog. And I can tell you funny stories about it came from that dog too. You know, Jean Fournier was the mother of Siberian Huskies. And she loved that dog. Of course, he came from Tommy. She loved Tommy. And she says to me one day, we're on the Panhandle circuit. It's 10 shows in a row without a break, right? We did that for many, many years. And she was on the first weekend. And Mike Zabel had a silver bitch named Buffy. And she had the most beautiful face, right? So Jean's judging. She gives me the breed over Buffy. And then she flies off or goes home or whatever. When the circuit's over, she calls me up and she says, did you win all 10 of those? And I said, no, I didn't win all 10. I said, Mike won 3 or 4. And she says, with that bitch? I said, yes. And she says, oh my God, you know. I said, Jean, that bitch has a beautiful face. And she said, Frank Murphy, the standard calls for a slightly oblique eye, and that bitch looks like Pat Gellerman. So
Oh, no.
Anyway, I think all these people that we're talking about are gone now.
That's a good story.
That bitch, Pat Gellerman. I had another Pat Gellerman story, and I love Pat. She's great, greatly. I was showing Scout, the German wire hair pointer.
Yep.
And I go up to Chattanooga, and the AKC rep is Linda Herbis. And she comes to me and she says, did you come here for Pat Gellerman? I said, yeah, she's doing a sporting group and a best in show. We might have to send her home. I said, what's the problem? She said, she keeps trying to drink the hand sanitizer. I said, Linda, take the hand sanitizer away and put a bottle of water on her table. And she says, okay, all right, we'll try that. So Sunday night, we're walking out of there, and she says, how'd your weekend go? I said, Pat gave me a group and a best in show. So I'm glad she didn't have to get sent home for drinking the hand sanitizer. You got to work with these people.
So what's next?
Oh, I don't know. What's next?
Come on, you're rolling. This is great.
I had someone who came to me, and actually she had Ridgebacks, right? And I was getting divorced. I was selling my house in Florida. I hadn't landed anywhere yet. I was looking up here in this area where I've been for the last 20 years in upstate of South Carolina. And she says, well, we got to meet at a show because you live in Eustis and I live in Ocala. It's only 30 minutes apart. But I wasn't always going to the Florida shows because I had sold that place down there. So we're having trouble hooking up. So she said to me, I'll meet you at the Ridgeback National in April in Perry, Georgia. And I said, okay, that would be great. So Jack Seacrest, Frank DiPaolo, a friend of mine from Virginia, we all brought our motorcycles to the circuit, okay? And the Ridgeback National judging was done at 1 o'clock every afternoon. So we get on the bikes and ride. You know, we went to see Jimmy Carter's house and the Civil War. What was it? A place where they kept prisoners of war. Very famous place called Andersonville. Real kind of eerie place. We were doing fun things every afternoon. So we come back in on the motorcycles, and I'm wearing a sleeveless shirt, and I got a do-rag on, and we're all having a beer. And there's this lady standing behind us with these 2 Ridgebacks, and she's not going anywhere. She's just standing there. And I said to her, can I help you? And she said, no, no, I'm waiting for a guy named Frank Murphy. So I said, oh, I'm Frank Murphy. And you could tell she's thinking in her head, like, what, what's this all about, right? So she shows me these two dogs. And the one dog, I said, he's too big, and he he's dark red color, and his eyes look like Gatorade. I said, this isn't my cup of tea here. Well, what about the bitch? So she shows me this 9-month-old bitch, and it's sway back and not too exciting either. So I said, well, the bitch, maybe if she got really fit, her top line could get better, and she might be all right. I said, the dog's too big and he's fat to begin with. He needs to lose some weight. I said, but, really, I'm not too excited about either one. So she goes in to the dog show the next day and she finds the breeder. And she says to the breeder, yeah, I don't know about that guy you recommended to me. She says, I think I got to find somebody else to show the dogs. And he says to her, no, he says, Frank will get it done. Frank's the guy. He can get it done. And she says, I just don't know about that. Well, 2 days later, I'm in a suit and I win the breed with the special, and we're waiting for the picture. And she comes over and she says to me, okay, all right, I'll see if we can get those dogs entered and you can start showing those dogs. So I said, okay. Well, I did finish that big dog. We never did finish the little puppy bitch. But she says to me, I want you to find me a dog that can go to Westminster. Okay. Now, I didn't want to tell her at the time that all you got to do is enter it and it can go to Westminster.
Exactly.
So I had just finished a beagle, a 15-inch beagle. And I knew the people, and they didn't have the kind of money to, So she gets that dog. And he finished number one beagle, but maybe 10 best in shows, something like that, So then she wanted another one. I got a Pembroke for a tricolored Pembroke. And he was number one for a couple of years. I think he was like number 3 herding dog. He did really well. And then we got into the German wire hair pointers, showed 2 of those. And what else did we do with her? I'm trying to remember. But it was a good deal because I got to pick them out, and I got to show them. And we really didn't have one. Even with Sam, he would get offered a dog and he would like it. And, the timing would be wrong and it just wouldn't click. It wouldn't catch on. So I actually had better luck with the second one. So did that. And then after that, she did a Siberian. We did 1 year. When she quit, I was doing one of Kim's Siberians with her, Kim LeBlanc, and
okay, I remember that dog too. Yeah.
Yeah, Seeker.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was, this has been really good to me.
Mm-hmm.
And just as
when did you retire, Frank?
So the last show I showed dogs at was Royal Canin. This is 25, 24, 23. Okay. And I probably should have quit the year before, but I had a Ridgeback dog that Molly was showing that he barely finished number 2. It came down to Royal Canin weekend. And by that time I couldn't run at all. My knees were shot. They were bone on bone all year long. It got worse and worse as the year went on. I tried everything. I did gel injections and cortisone injections and knee braces. The whole thing was just going downhill fast. So I don't know how it came to be that they were. Oh, I know. Mary Dukes was retiring as AKC rep, so I applied for that job and I got it. And I did that through the end of April. My knees were horrible. You know how these airports are. You land at gate 2 and you're taking off from gate 46 and dragging a computer through the airports. And then at the shows, um, just standing and observing a judge for 45 minutes. I mean, I was in agony, you know. So I quit, and it was like 30 days later I got the first knee replaced, and then they wouldn't do the next one for 3 months. So 3 months later I did the second one, and so I couldn't run with a Ridgeback, but
The
yeah,
pain's gone.
yeah, the pain's gone. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
What about, yeah, have you thought about judging at all?
you know, so I have a theory about this whole game. The people who the people who ran up and down the roads for 40 years doing this like I did, the people who had golden retrievers brought to them that were mediocre, that were hard to find majors on, the people who gave you great dogs in competitive breeds that finished in 3-4 weeks. The we we lived this 24 hours a day. We lived this, whether it was the maintenance on the vehicle, the driving, the bathing of the dogs, the showing of the dogs, the taking care of them when they're sick. We did this. It was the only thing we thought about for 40 years. And you get to the point where you've had enough. It is some burnout that comes along with that.
Oh, no
And
question.
a lot of people, I was having this conversation with Corey Krickenberg at the Ridgeback National, and he brought up Maripi and Scott Summers. He included me in that. People who were over it, you can only take so much of if it when it's good, it's good. When it's bullshit, you can only take so much of it. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
So
sure.
what happens is the people who are getting group after group after group, and they're flying to nationals and they're doing seminars and all this, they're not burned out because they sat in a cubicle their whole life. When we were running up and down the road doing the cherry blossom circuit 10 days in a row, doing the panhandle circuit 10 days in a row without a day off, they're sitting in a cubicle in an office wishing they were at the dog show. Okay? Now they got all the energy, all the enthusiasm that it takes to prosper in the judging world. Whereas, I don't want somebody telling me about Rottweilers when, in the 1990s, I finished one a month. I had 4 in the truck all the time, you know,
No,
and
it's a hard pill to swallow. I understand. There's no question.
yeah, yeah, I was at this when I was a rep. I was at show. We're watching Rottweilers for a reason. There's a dog who obviously wins the breed, and there's 2 cute little Rottweiler bitches there that you would have had to, concentrate on, figure out which one gets best of opposite. And there was a black and tan coonhound there that that you can't believe somebody gave 2 majors to, right? And the conversation came up. Thank God he picked the black and tan coonhound for best of opposite. I said, "What do you mean?" I said, the other 2 were Rottweilers. You're talking about a dog with a good top line and a good rear, but looked like a black and tan coonhound. the Rottweiler people wouldn't have fed it, you know. And I'm thinking, man, no, not that interested. Now, I do like to judge. I don't think I would like. I know I wouldn't like the airports, you know. But I just did last month. I did the top 20 bull mastiffs, and there's a place up above us in Asheville. It's about an hour from here, and they do a lot of national specialties. And when I was in the lobby, I was looking around because I get called for so many of them up there. I thought there was a picture of me in the lobby, and it said, "We'll judge your top 20 for dinner." So I did. I did the bull mastiffs there. I was scheduled to do bloodhounds there, and they changed the date, and it didn't work for me. I did Irish setters there for Sam McDonald, and those are great nights. I love those. You know.
Yeah.
I've done what you call sweepstakes at the National 100 Ridgeback puppies. I did the Ridgeback top 20. I what did I do in they had some kind of thing in Greenville in July. It was called the Juniors Olympics or something like that. I thought I was going to judge the best junior of the cluster, which I've done many times, but they brought in 13 kids. So there was some way that they were giving them points throughout the weekend. And that was fun. And I had a friend call me about they're going to have a best of opposite sex competition at their all breed show. It's not my idea, right? But she wanted to know if I would do all the groups in the best in show. So I'm going to judge the best of opposite dog at the show coming up in Georgia.
Interesting. That's interesting, though. You know,
yeah.
You know. I'm not sure if I was out there running a number one dog and I went opposite sex, I'm going to stay, though.
Yeah, no, I can't. Yeah. But you know, it's kind of a different world now. I just got back from the Ridgeback National, and they have a big club in Florida. I think they have 51 members in the Sunshine State Ridgeback Club, and you'd be surprised. Like, for instance, they asked me to do a handling seminar at the boot camp they did in July. So I drove down to Florida and I did that. So the guy who was in charge of it, really good guy, really nice guy, and he says to me, "Would you come down and do this? We'll put you up, we'll feed you, you know, all this stuff, whatever the fee is." So I said, "Sure, I'll come down and do it." Well, a couple of years ago, we're at a dog show, and he's calling this dog Corey. And I said, that's his name, Corey? He says, "Yeah." I said, why is it you name him Corey? He says, "I like that name." So I said, "Oh, okay." I said, "Hey, what's the name of the top winning Ridgeback of all time?" He says, "I don't know." I said, "Well, his name was Corey." I said, I showed him, he had 28 best in shows. Second place dog in this breed has 11. You know, it was Sam's dog. And here's this guy, he's putting on these events, and he's very active. He's breeding. He shows his own dog. He didn't know what the top winning dog of all time was.
Didn't know. Yeah.
So
you get a lot of that now, Frank.
So I mean, there'll be people who want to be the best of opposite.
Yeah.
The win the group or the best of opposite group. So
it seems odd. That's all.
Yeah, it does for sure.
No, what if the Ridgeback Club of America called you up and said they wanted to judge the national? Though you'd jump in there.
I would do that. Yeah, but it won't happen.
Well, let's hope it does.
Nah,
we need people like you doing things like that. So,
you know, before I retired, I was lucky enough. I think I had 6 number one Ridgebacks in a row.
Yeah,
and so when the year was over and you look at the stats, like I went to 135 shows, those dogs won 118 best of breeds. So they didn't lose the breed, very much, right? Well, especially when I went to Florida, where all the numbers are, and where everybody, they got their own club and they all get along and all. Man, I went to the ring. You know what it's like. I went to the ring with my hat in my hand. I stayed out of the way. I didn't. If two people are talking about a dog, I didn't enter the conversation. I just went and showed my dog because they don't want to like me. They don't. They're not happy with the idea that I came down there anyway in the first place. So I'm down there one day and I'm doing my thing. I'm staying out of the way, not talking about anybody's dog, anything. So I'm standing near the judge's table. This is in Brooksville, outside under the tent. And there's a woman down there who she must get very uptight when she goes in the ring. And a lot of times she entered her dog so soon that she's the first in line in Best of Breed every day. And she don't know where to go, and she don't know where to stop, and so you had to kind of, plan your time around her. But she took somebody's bitch in for the classes, and she went second, and they're calling her for reserve, and she's standing 10 feet from me. I could see the number on her arm, and she's kind of staring off into space. And they're all calling number 12, number 12. And they're out there in the field. They're all looking at each other's numbers. And the judge is standing on her tippy toes trying to find number 12. And I'm like, Frank, you know better, just keep your mouth shut, right? So I standing there and I'm not going to say anything. In a moment of weakness, I leaned over and I whispered to her, they want you to go back in the ring, right? Harmless,
Yeah.
She puts her hands down by her thighs. She points her nose up at the tent and she yells, "Stop screaming at me. You're making me nervous." And I turn around and I look at the judge, and the judge is looking at me like, "You freaking creep. What the hell did you say to her, right?" And I thought, "Oh, you are so stupid." So they got her in the ring. She did her thing, but I'm like, I knew better than that. I just knew that. And I'm sure that judge thinks I said something correct, or, so.
Oh,
but yeah, but I don't see that. I don't see them asking me to do that. I've done the sweepstakes.
Never know, Frank.
In the top 20. So, and I enjoyed myself 2 weeks ago. Went down there and I just watched,
Yeah. So what's next for Frank then?
Oh, I don't know. I have this beautiful place here. It's 6 acres, nice house, and I have a really nice kennel. I built this kennel 19 years ago. You can come in the driveway. There's a gravel road that goes behind the house back to the kennel. You pull under a 70-foot long motorhome carport. There's a covered area that goes down to the kennel so you can unload dogs in the rain. And then when you're leaving, you just drive out straight and it goes to a side street, another driveway goes out. You don't have to turn the motorhome around. When you stop, you plug the motorhome in right there. There's a dump where you can dump the motorhome. I mean, it's just a really, really easy place, a nice place. So when I retired, I put it for sale. And then I had all these surgeries. I'm still having a little problem with some skin cancers. And so finally put it on the market for 6 months. And we had a couple people look at it, but the market's terrible. I don't know how it is in Canada, but they're not selling anything.
Yeah, same.
So The listing ran out, and actually had two people inquire about it in the last week or so since the listing ran out. But if we were to sell this place, we would go about 100 miles northwest, and there's a place called Hiawassee, Georgia, and on the other side of the lake is Hayesville, North Carolina, and we like it there. And Sam's daughter, my wife's best friend, Deborah, she built a place up there that she goes to in the summer. And so we would go up there, maybe an acre, and take it easy up there.
Sounds nice.
Yeah, I think it would work out. We still have 5 Ridgebacks, and my wife loves the breeding. There's a bitch right here next to me in the living room.
I saw her wandering around a bit. Yeah.
Okay, she's due tonight.
Oh wow.
And we co-own her with some people in Fort Worth, Texas, and I drove to Mississippi week or so ago and got her. She's due tonight, but my wife loves doing the breeding, and of course the kennel comes in handy for that.
Sure.
But there won't be another kennel.
Well, I get it. Time's up. You want to relax. Time to relax, Frank. So
That's right. That's right.
Well, I appreciate this, man. It was good to see you. You were full of stories.
That's what they say. They say I have a good friend of mine out in Denver. Her name is Mary Lynn Elliott. I don't know if I think she has the whole hound group now, and she's married to a fellow named Nathan. I was actually staying at her house many years ago with Forrest Gump at the Denver shows after the Garden, and she had a blind date with this guy, and she wound up marrying him, and they're still together. And she said to me, Nathan won't come to the dog shows because he says he's heard all your stories.
I think we all get like that, though. We all have our stories, and sometimes we repeat them. I remember walking up to George sometimes, and he'll be telling a story, and I'm like, "Oh, I've heard that one, George," and I kept on walking.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, that's what it's all about, though. I really appreciate your time, though, man. So
no
sweat. Good to see you.
No sweat.
Really good to see you.
I tell you, you're still showing?
No, I'm judging now.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
When I did stop, I did go through withdrawal, but not the dog shows, but my friends.
Right. Yeah.
Now, 41 years I had the most social job in the world. Yeah. We're all parked together in the parking lot together all night, and we're all in the same building during the day. And now I'm at home. I had these for a year. I either had bad knees or new knees, and didn't go anywhere. And it takes a little bit to get used to that because I left home. I left home 50 times a year.
Yeah.
So
I still try to go to a dog show at least once or twice a month, showing my beagle. So just to get out there and see everybody. So
yeah, the knees are good.
The knees are good. I had my hip replaced 5 years ago now. 5 years ago.
Okay.
And after that, I had some issues last year, but we're getting through those, and I enjoy judging and keep motoring forward. So.
Yeah. I always kind of thought that judging would be a natural progression, but I really believe what I said about the burnout thing.
Yeah.
When I see these people so enthusiastic about getting another group, going to a national specialty and checking another box, I'm thinking, yeah, but all those years where we were burning ourselves out in this sport, you were hobbying it.
Yeah.
And now you got the enthusiasm still, and some of us are burned out.
And the system just doesn't work for guys like you and I. I like we put in our time. We really did, and we deserve something for it. I think if we don't have, not that we're any better, but I think is we've already put our time in. We put our time in, so I think that box should already be checked.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, I watch friends of mine who were going off to work every day to sit in that cubicle, for that company, while we were struggling with uh, the motorhome. The DEF light is on. I got to limp it into a Freightliner dealership. I still got to get to the dog show in daylight to put the X pens up so I won't be in the dark. And um, we lived that for so long, and now they're giving groups to people who studied the book. They read the standard. They went to a national. The presenter was or was not, up to par, and they passed the test. They passed the interview with the rep, and now they got the breed. Whereas, we showed the good, the bad, and the ugly ones in that breed.
And we
So
lived it. So
yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
get it. I get it. All right, man. Again, I thank you for your time. I appreciate it. I'm glad we got to catch up, and everybody's gonna be happy to find out what you're up to. Good to see you.
Good to talk to you.
All right, it's good to see you. You take care of yourself.
All right. Thanks, Will.
Thanks, Frank. Sounds like you're doing just fine. If you like what you see here, make sure you press the like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget about the podcast every week. Take care, guys.